Videos like this and like this are running around the internet telling you that you're addicted to sugar so that you will buy their product. Papers like this are published so you will buy their diet book and buy their supplement. But excessive sugar consumption for some, even though it may share some signs of addiction-like behavior, like excessive cravings, withdrawal symptoms, dopamine release, isn't an addiction, and we'll discuss it. This is from the European Journal of Nutrition, and it's a lot. I'll give you the baby birded version. A true addiction and an addictive substance meets these criteria. An addictive substance can be identified. It exerts some kind of neurobiochemical response. There is a loss of control associated with this substance, an increased motivation to consume this substance, and a persistence to find and consume this substance despite negative consequences. And removing this substance causes withdrawal symptoms, which include a loss of control and cravings for that problematic substance. Now, humans don't consume sugar alone. We consume food. So most of the evidence to support sugar as addictive comes from rodent studies, and the rodent data doesn't even support this. Rodents only displayed addictive behavior to sugar in the context of intermittent access to sugar. And these behaviors were motivated by palatability and sweetness, not by neurobiochemical changes. Lastly, when rodents were given extended access to sugar, they remained susceptible to devaluation procedures. So when sugar was laced with a nauseating agent, the rodents stopped eating it. But when cocaine was associated with negative consequences like pain, they still pursued it. So a true addiction? No. Moving on to humans. In an effort to classify what foods are addictive, there's something called the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And it classifies foods based on its pharmacokinetic similarities to drugs, aka high potency and rapid absorption rate. So high fat, high refined carbs, low protein, low fiber, low water content. And then they made a list of foods that met this criteria. Here was the issue. Assuming that people's glucose response was associated to food addiction, incorrect. Everybody's glucose responds differently, and some people responded high to good foods and low to bad foods. And this is a list of arbitrary characteristics. People's perceptions about problematic foods can actually be a bigger variable than the nutrient content of the food itself. The food addiction scale also classified what food addictive-like behaviors were. And the population group that eats the most refined carbohydrates, candy, sweets, chips, etc. are young adults. And if food addiction was a thing, you would assume that this population has a high amount of food addiction based on this scale, and they don't. Researchers also found that this classification, disease phenotype of food addiction, also could fit under the umbrella of another diagnosis. Interestingly enough, it shares many of the symptoms of binge eating disorder, large portions of food at once, loss of control, eating in isolation, guilt and shame. People don't just crave sugar. We crave hyperpalatable foods. And these cravings are short-lived, and they go away with fasting or indulging in the craving. Whereas with drugs, these cravings are persistent, they don't lessen with abstinence, and they have a much more significant neurobiochemical effect. And food addiction may mimic many addictive-like behaviors. It may also be a subset of a very common eating disorder. But sugar addiction isn't real, and I hope this helps.